Welcome to this special edition of the Forecourt Tech podcast. I'm delighted to welcome François Mezzina, who is currently the president of the IFSF. He's also a payment specialist for his day job at Total, and he's connected to several other standards bodies as well. So François, just welcome first of all. Just give us a sense of the work you're doing at the moment.
Well, currently I'm taking care of all the payment acceptance issues for TotalEnergies, the new, let's say, multi-energy company, shall I say. So I'm dealing with all the proximity and remote payments for the company over the 15,000 sites we do operate all over the world. So I'm the prescriber of all the payment devices, indoor, outdoor, unattended, and also the prescriber for all the acquirers we are working with, we are connected with, and I also prescribe my company to the best, at least in Europe, the best software payment provider to have one pan-European payment solution all over Europe and potentially extend it abroad, especially I have in mind in Africa, where there's shall I say, Africa was late maybe in electronic payments, but now they're speeding up and they're probably ahead now of what we're doing in Europe. And not to forget Asia, we have some presence too, where there are also different payment experiences that we might integrate one day.
I want to ask you about Africa in a little while, but just coming back to the standards side of it, because you've been active for over 10 years with the IFSF. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and also why it's so important to have standards within the industry?
So my company is committed to standards for more than 10 years now. I mean, it was... we're at the very beginning 30 years ago, and we did celebrate the 30th anniversary last year in Manchester. It's in the interest of all the actors in the forecourt activity to develop standards just for the benefit, not only for the distributors that do use the services of many providers, many vendors, but also for the vendors themselves to be in a position to provide their services to as many as possible distributors. So it's a win-win for both parties, shall I say, where we want time-to-market solutions, best in class possible, where in fact the standards we do produce is just to interface two components on the forecourt, and we're not dealing with the application themselves that are connected to the other one. So that's it. It's time to market, cost savings, of course, because you save time and you save also developments, and you eliminate, let's say, private interfaces that are always a challenge whenever you want to change from one solution to another one. So that's all the benefits we have through standards, and we need to promote them, as I said, for both parties.
It's interesting as well that the IFSF has quite a few members, doesn't it? I think you were saying it's got over 100 members. Some of them are operators, some of them are software providers. Just give us a sense of the kinds of companies that are involved in this standards initiative.
Well, we are about nearly 140 members within the association. The principal members are the oil companies made of Shell, Exxon, BP, Circle K, OMV, Kuwait, and TotalEnergies. And we have then all the associates or technical associates, where we find not only the device providers on the forecourt, for instance, the forecourt device controllers, the POS themselves, I mean the electronic cash registers, payment devices providers, price pool providers, car wash providers, rollovers. We cover all the, I mean, our members are all those that do have an interaction with the forecourt. And shall I say, more recently, we have providers that are involved in the electric vehicle charging, for instance. And so our extension is to make a liaison with those partners like the Open Charge Alliance or the Environment Foundation, for instance, because there's also a principle there is that our members are willing to use standards, but IFSF is not to, let's say, reinvent the wheel for existing standards. So we try and find the best in class already existing standards we liaise with, and if necessary, we jointly make changes, adapt, or create new standards to be able to interact with those new worlds.
I think you're also quite keen on building an ecosystem, if you will, of different standards bodies as well that are working in a similar area. So I know you also represent Nexo, and I think there's a connection with Connexus as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about the work you're doing with other standards bodies?
Well, the very first and last one you mentioned, Connexus, is shall I say, is our cousin from North America. While IFSF was starting to be European, but extend worldwide because our members are worldwide within IFSF. But we decided recently to have a stronger relation with Connexus because we are clearly complementary. While IFSF was very much focusing on the forecourt itself, Connexus did also, but they did focus more, let's say, on more the back office and let's say cloud solutions to operate a service station. So in that sense, we did create a liaison with Connexus, and more than a liaison, we signed an agreement with them to develop jointly APIs on different domains on the activity of the, let's say, multi-energy activities. So as such, we have working groups that are, let's say, governed, chaired jointly with Connexus.
I think you have 5 key areas, at least that's what I read on the website, and at least 4 of them are now in partnership with Connexus. What are those areas that you're looking into? And you mentioned EV charging, over the air, cloud. Which areas are kind of exciting for you at the moment that are developing quickly?
I think the most exciting part is to define, first of all, and that's the skeleton of our standards, the new API data dictionary, from which you can develop many standards, many applications. And that's, I believe, a great success of our joint work with Connexus to have this data dictionary, which is the basis of the new APIs we do produce. And shall I say, what is the most satisfactory, let's say, contribution of IFSF there is to provide to the market the latest, let's say, standard software, API-based, that do manage to operate a forecourt, let's say, in a modern way, with interactive online, let's say, connection to the various devices, to build, in fact, what for? It's to always better operate the activity on the forecourt, to be in a position to act quickly when there is a maintenance issue or whatsoever, to control itself the activity, to monitor it closely, and yes, to bring extra results to those distributors that do operate the service. So yeah, it's we're in transition phase, Ralph, and for IFSF we have 2 challenges. The first one is to be still in the energy mobility and the transition we are currently experiencing. There's a great transition, especially in Europe, where the electric vehicles are promoted versus the old fuel engines that are forbidden by 2035. So as such, our standards need to evolve and integrate those new mobility energies. So not only electric vehicles, but hydrogen, gas. well, we started the work years ago now for those, let's say, alternative energies. Electric vehicle is much more recent. I believe the industry is still building, and we IFSF, as we are a standard body that certainly was created, let's say 30 years ago or 31 years ago, to take care of the fuel distribution. Now we need to evolve to be able to serve all the energies. And the second challenge we are facing is this digital revolution we're entering in, for which our standards need to adapt. That's why, by the way, we turned into API standards, which is let's say the most recent, let's say, way to make two components to interact and interface. So it's a lot of work for all the members, because, by the way, IFSF is producing standards based on its members' contribution, and somehow that's a guarantee for us to always match what the market expects. We don't invent something that is theoretical. We do create according to the requirements of our members, and it's clearly said that our members are expecting to be able to cope with new energies in a modern world, digital world, and those are the two challenges we have in front of us. We are engaged in. It's not an easy path.
No, but it sounds like important work. I think it's also worth mentioning that everybody who's involved, I imagine, has a day job like yourself. So it's not that people are purely doing this work, not doing anything else. So it seems like a really good thing that you're doing. If I'm listening to this and perhaps I'm a software provider, I want to get into the forecourt market, I can see that by using these standards, I'm more acceptable in the sales process. I'm also building on gateways and connectivity to other products, so I can say that I support them. But I think I also read that you offer technical support as well, don't you? So is that just for members, and how does that work if you're trying to develop a new product?
So of course we have a technical support where members can call for. We do provide not only standards, but we provide also some simulators in order for the developers especially to verify that what they've done is compliant with the standard itself. So as such, IFSF, which is a non-profit organization, by the way, and it's important to say, we do provide assistance to our members. And I think it's really key for them for a good appropriation of what our association is producing, and for their benefits, of course. So they can email the association to ask for any support whenever they are members, and we will reply to them.
It's a great service. I mean, I was a software developer back in the day, and I think as soon as you see examples how to use the APIs, the application programming interface, how to work with different technologies, it makes life a lot easier. So yeah, great service. I wanted to delve back into a little bit of your background. I wondered if you could give us a sense of what it's like when you look at Europe, when you look at Africa, North America. I mean, you mentioned a huge number of forecourts that your company, your day job, you're responsible for. What are the sort of different trends that you see in Africa compared to Europe, for example?
Well, in Africa, the mobile payment has a great success. What I would call our traditional account electronic payment system we know in Europe, North America, in Australia, in Japan, they don't have that much in Africa because of, let's say, originally the telecoms. But now that you can communicate through the air, and the fact that, let's say, the population has rather a mobile phone in its pocket than a plastic card, they've developed the payment scheme or network, and not one, but several were created to be able to do mobile payments. So for instance, in Africa, they are evolving, and you were referring earlier on, Ralph, on Nexo Association that I'm the chairman of the General Assembly of, where in fact one of its members in Africa is investing in the Nexo standards for the payment part, but all for the retail activities, not only for fuel, and for which they want to integrate not only the standards for the card, the traditional electronic card payments, but also for the mobile payments. So what I can see and what will be the trend where IFSF as a standard body for the forecourt will have to cope with is also to be able to integrate those, let's say, alternative payments, mobile payments with contactless or QR code form factor, and all those way of paying where, let's say, until now, at least on the forecourt, you tend to pay on a proximity mode, means that the customer is presently is present on the forecourt itself or in the shop. He might tomorrow, let's say, book his charging session from home and planning to be at your site 2 hours later to get a charging session, for instance, but you would have paid remotely. So it means that we IFSF need to get prepared to offer standards that do allow a customer to be served, and most of it allow him to be paid or identified either on a proximity mode or on a remote mode, at the end offering an omni-channel experience to the customer, whatever the situation might be. That's one of those challenges we need to face IFSF as a standard body for being able to provide technical standards that can cope with both worlds. So, and that's what we're experiencing in Africa. I mean, the mobile payment is still a proximity payment mode, but they want also to have the remote part of it, with the usual and classical way to pay with plastic cards we know today, or whatever mobile EMV emulations. So the payment world is a challenge, and for our mobility activity, it's a challenge because especially, I mean, for the traditional fuel, but even for ever charging or whatever hydrogen or LPG, when we do distribute those energies, we don't know in advance what will be the exact amount that will be delivered. So there's always this concept of pre-authorization, or even more precisely, the deferred payment to be activated. It was originally done for fuel, but I think we need to extend that principle, which is already the case for EV charging, but for the others, to be able to do those pre-authorization. But we need to do it, how to do it when it's on a remote way, how to do it whenever instant payments. I didn't talk about that, but that's something that is also popping up, let's say, strongly now in all over the world, shall I say, where an instant payment is it's a credit transfer that is done within 10 seconds. How do you deal with a pre-auth where you're not supposed to take the money out of the account of the customer because you don't know yet what was actually delivered? So it's a challenge where somehow the standard bodies, more focusing on payments, need to provide solutions there, where we IFSF need to be cautious of and see how we do integrate these new payment methods. And for sure, we need always to provide to our members standards that can guarantee reliability, security, and let's say a guarantee of, especially when we talk about payment, the guarantee that the payment being processed is properly done, and have the merchant being properly paid and the customer properly debited.
It's fascinating, the two use cases there, because I've worked in particularly East Africa. So M-Pesa is the mobile payment method that I think probably started a good 10, 15 years ago. And when you see it in action, it just makes, I mean, I think in some ways they were ahead of us before things like, paying with a mobile phone. So just above a bar or a cafe, you'll have a phone number and you can send money. And even to this day, it's quicker to pay people in Kenya, for example, or Tanzania, Rwanda, via M-Pesa from Europe than it is through the traditional banks. So it's interesting that certainly there, um, M-Pesa is kind of number one. A lot of people still don't have a bank account, partly because it's so difficult to get a bank account and you have to prove lots of information. And then the second scenario you're talking about is EV charging. I find that fascinating, that probably the biggest barrier to EV is still, or at least people moving to EV initially, is still range anxiety. And I think if you can offer a service where you say, look, don't worry about it. If you get to 100 kilometers on the battery, that's all you've got left. The car will automatically find a charging station for you, and it will already be paid, particularly if it's a company car, which certainly here in the UK, a lot of new EV cars are actually company cars because there are tax benefits. So the company's already paid for it. I mean, you're removing a lot of friction with both of those scenarios. So is that where you see the standards that you've developed really winning in the future? That it just makes life easier, doesn't it?
Well, that's the expectation of our members, to be able to provide standards that make, as you said, life easier for both customers and the merchants on the other side. Okay, we need to think of both. I mean, if it's easier for the customer but difficult for the merchant, I don't believe that they will, let's say, promote whatever new mean of payment or new process of getting mobility energy. So we need to provide and satisfy both parties here. And I believe we can trust our members within IFSF to, as a matter of fact, produce, let's say, the best-in-class standards possible to deal with those two challenges. I mean, those two not challenges, but two actors we need to
Mm.
satisfy with.
Well, it neatly brings me to every time I ask people past, present, and future. So when it comes to technologies on the forecourt, when you look back to the past and you think either there was a technology that I spotted really early and now everybody's using it, or perhaps there was a technology a bit like Betamax for video, if you're old enough to remember that, VHS1, despite Betamax potentially being better. Maybe there's a technology that you think, oh, it just never quite happened. What would you say based on your career?
Well, I believe that what IFSF has produced over the last 30 years has been widely used all over the world. So it's a success. Okay, no discussion about it. So now the future is this, let's say, API transition on a technical point of view, where it's an open world, by the way, where lots of let's say actors within this field, but also in other industries, other verticals, are producing APIs. That's every day. So probably that's the challenge for IFSF, is to be able to demonstrate by producing standard APIs, not private ones, all the actors in the mobility chain will take benefit from. And that's the greatest difficulty. Somehow the challenge is the adoption of those APIs, because if I may say, what we have developed and produced for our members and for the industry is widely used today and gives satisfaction. And there's no real, and that's the difficulty, there's no real strong request to change what is already running properly for decades. So What we, IFSF, need to be prepared to is to be able to offer to our members and to the industry new standards that whenever the vendors or distributors are willing to change, because they have to change, they have to integrate new mobilities like AV, like hydrogen and so forth, they will have in their hands something already available thanks to IFSF and what has been produced. We are somehow their partner for that transition they need to deal with. It's always investments for them, but I think it's the best way to invest is to invest in, let's say, applications, devices that do bring with them IFSF standards, and that's the challenge. Let's be honest, the API world is not that recent, but in the application itself, there's not too many being used today because it's always an investment. And when you buy a dispenser, when you buy a forecourt controller, for instance, or even a cash register system, maybe it will have a shorter lifetime, but still, you invest for years and years. Let's say for at least a decade, not to say 2 decades, because what we have from the vendors is robust, and there's no way why you should change something that is running properly. You were referring to Africa, for instance. We have dispensers that are still working for years and years and years. So using, let's say, the old standard generation. It's whenever it's completely broken, you don't find the spares and all that stuff, you might have to change. And that's the question then is, if you change for, let's say, the old standards, or do you change for the new ones? And that's maybe the good question to raise at that time, to say, it's maybe a good idea to switch. So the transition will be a long transition. That's what I'm saying. And we, IFSF, in fact, are producing standards to deal with this long-term transition. We're at the beginning.
Is that also causing you? I mean, in the old days of software, we used to call it advocacy. I always used to find that term interesting, almost religious, from companies like Microsoft. But are you finding you have to do a bit more marketing, a bit more sort of examples of why some of the API integration and the newer versions of standards are important? Because as you said, there's a lot of APIs out there. So as a developer, part of the challenge you've got, I suppose, is making me aware that I could do this. And then from a customer point of view, it's probably just down to a business case, isn't it? If you can implement these things, then you can take advantage of the new world with EV technology, for example, or the payments that you talked about. But is it putting a bit of sort of focus for you on marketing IFSF as well?
We've defined a strategy roadmap that we presented last year at the 30th anniversary, as a matter of fact, to define what is our short, medium, and long-term strategy to be able to answer to our members' expectations. And clearly, one of the aspects in this roadmap is to do, as you mentioned, marketing. I mean, good publicity of what we're producing, and we do aim at. And that's the difficulty of the IFSF association, because if I may say, we are a good standard body, meaning technical. We are not clever enough about marketing, because it's not because you're a good engineer and the most clever one to invent something that you'll be the best person to market what you've invented. And somehow IFSF is in that shape. We are very clever. Our members are very clever to produce standards, issue new standards, make them evolve. But then the marketing part is to make aware our, let's say, the market, the industry, what we've done is available, is working, is time to market and all that stuff. We need to make efforts on that. And it's part of our roadmap. Among our roadmap, where we have, of course, the technical roadmap, when I talked about heavy electric vehicle, for instance, or new means of payments, developed API payments, for instance. We also have in our roadmap a kind of marketing plan to improve, and somehow, Ralph, today when I'm talking with you, thanks to Forecourt Tech, it's a way for us to do marketing, to make, let's say, the market more aware of what is IFSF, the International Forecourt Standards Forum, where sometimes it's very difficult to pronounce for those that don't know the association. But that's the point. We need to market.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the work is fantastic and speaks for itself. I mean, when you said 30 years of progress, that's a huge message. I've got a question for you. We always ask our guests to leave a question for the next guest. What is your opinion, or what, in your opinion, is the main product or service that operators of forecourts will be selling in 2030? So I'll ask you that again. What, in your opinion, is the main product or service that operators will be selling in the year 2030?
Very good question. I'm not Madame Irma, but if I were to bet on it, I think by 2030, fuel products will be still very much present. It's only 6 years ahead of us. Despite all the investments being done on the electric vehicle charging and alternative mobility energies, I believe the fuel will be still leading, shall I say, the distribution. I might be wrong. It's really my personal vision here as a driver on the road for mobility. But clearly the market share of the fuel will be decreasing time to time. So by 2030, the position we know today won't be the one in 2030, but it will be still ahead. That's what I believe. So I think, and that's the transition where the Forecourt needs to move to, is to be able to integrate those new mobility energies, not only EV but hydrogen, especially for the trucks, or LPG. Or gas, alternative gas, where we need to invest on. And by the way, I was listening recently about innovations on the biofuels, and that are also where let's say the industry is working on. So yeah, if I were to bet, still fuels, but maybe new generation of fuels, biofuels, but not having the strongest position they have today, but still ahead.
Great answer. Thank you very much. Well, Francois, that's all we have time for today. So thank you so much for coming on the Forecourt Tech podcast.
It was a great pleasure, Hal. Thank you very much.